Monday, August 9th, 2021, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So the Comex is a crime scene. Of course, it's not going to be investigated because it's the big boys who committed the crime. There was a massive silver and gold raid yesterday, right after the open at 6 p.m. Eastern Time or 11 p.m. London time on the Comex. Gold and silver were smashed down massively. Gold traded to the March bottom and it held. Silver traded to the 22 level and it held. This morning we're back up. Gold is at 1744. Yes, it's down 17, but it was down almost $100. Silver was down to 2205. That's on my system. It might have been higher on official numbers from Comex, but right now we are almost back at 24. So I'm going to talk about this, why it's a raid and why it's outrageous and why it's a crime scene. And to do that, I'm going to talk about my professional background. There's still a lot of you who don't know who I am, new viewers who ask me, what's your background? So let's get to my background. I started out at a small private bank in Geneva, Switzerland, back in the late 80s. In 1992, I was offered a job to become a bond broker, a government bond broker here in London, cash broker, treasuries, all kinds of government bonds, major government bonds. And then eventually I moved to another firm where I became a futures broker for government bonds. So I know very well what I'm talking about in terms of the futures. And I wasn't a futures broker for private clients who traded one or two lots. I was a broker for institutional clients that could take thousands of lots in positions of contracts in futures. And I'll give you two examples. Back in the mid to late 90s about what I had to do. And I'm not going to give you, of course, the name of the client, but it was a big Italian institutional client. And at the time I was at Citibank. I was working at Citi Futures, which was their futures department, which they sold off eventually back in 97. That's another story. But we had a big Italian institutional client, and the trader there, we found out, and I'd just been hired at Citibank. So there's another broker who I replaced. He had the relationship with this client. And we found out, we knew, of course, that they had a huge position in Italian government bond futures, the BTP. And we found out, someone higher up found out that this person was not supposed to have built up this big position. How did this person get away with it? Well, this person was running the back office and trading, which was what Nick Leeson did. And nowadays you can't have that because people in the back office who settle the trade and book the trades, they can hide the trades. So you can't have a trader doing both. So that's what happened. And I was given the task of getting rid of that position. And it was, if I remember well, just over 8,000 BTP futures contracts. Some of you might remember the BTP. Some of you might realize how huge that is. That's a couple of $1 billion worth of positions. It's like trying to get rid of 8,000 lots of US Treasury futures contracts. And if I had done what they did yesterday on the Comex, right on the open, to dump 24,000 gold futures contracts, I would have lost my job. I would have been investigated. But it took me a week to get rid of that position to make sure that the other people in the market didn't know that we had to do that. Because if they did, they would have front run us and we would have lost a lot of money for our clients. So That's the first example. Another example is not as serious. Another Italian big institutional client, they used to use the futures to hedge, really, basically their huge underlying positions. And this one was actually in stock market index futures. Even though government bonds were my specialty, some clients had to do other things, and I used to do it for them. And they had an order to sell 1,000 Nikkei futures on the open, from the open, and the open, I think, in Asia for the Nikkei futures in Osaka Exchange, because there's a Nikkei on the CME as well, but they wanted to do it in Japan. I had to stay up at home after midnight London to sell those 1,000 futures contracts. And I think it's the underlying notional amount is about $250 million worth. But they knew that if you tried to sell that right away on the open, right when the market is a bit thin, it would have driven the price lower. It would have screwed up their hedge. So it took me an hour. So I was up from after midnight for an hour, selling every 10 minutes, 100 contracts. So if I try to do what the traders on Comex did yesterday, I would have lost my job. So that's what I'm trying to say. I know that this is either, it's not incompetence because it's happened many times before, these kinds of raids. And the Comex open on Sunday is probably the thinnest time of the day and thinnest day of the week on a Sunday at 6 p.m. New York or 11 p.m. London. The markets are very thin, and they picked that time to basically sell 24,000 futures in a matter of minutes. So is it any wonder that the price dropped $100? Is that individual who sold those futures, is the individual going to lose his or her job? No. Their job was to drive the price lower. It's not normal when you're trying to sell something that you try to sell it at a lower price. You should be trying to maximize the value of your sales. So that's why I can tell you that it's not normal. It was criminal, but it's not going to be investigated by the CFTC because this is being done for the central banks and especially the Federal Reserve in order to keep the real barometer of inflation or barometers of inflation, gold and silver, from telling investors and the general public that there is a problem. Is it any wonder that this week we have the CPI number? I'm not sure what day it's coming out. I have to check that. But so let me show you what happened then and why I think actually this is basically made a low for gold now. Gold can only go higher now after this raid, and the fact that it held. Yes, it might go down a bit later, but I think it's very positive. It might sound counterintuitive. And the other reason they do it at that time is that most businesses, most bullion dealers are kind of closed on a Sunday. Yes, you can do things online now, but I bet you very few people were able to buy real physical gold and silver yesterday. It would have been difficult. It's past midnight here in Europe, but someone tweeted it out because I was up watching this. I don't usually stay up for the Comex Open, but I wanted to see after the raid on Friday what would happen. And I noticed that we opened a little lower and it was being chipped away, the price. And then before I went to bed, I just had another look, and there you go. I saw that massive sale of the contract. It was over $100 lower, about $100 low from the high of the session. I think we got 1768, and as you can see here, the low is 1766. This is from my IG index spread trading account. They match the futures or the spot price. So you can see that this is not normal, the kind of move we had here right in the middle of the night. And again, why would they want to do that? Well, I think it's because some big institution, be it a bullion bank or maybe a big client of bullion banks or whatever, central banks, they need to cover paper shorts. And the only way to do that is to get the price lower. Yes, by selling it, it gives them a chance to cover it. And I think, frankly, they might not have succeeded in covering as much as they wanted, because at the same time it's very thin, and that's why the market went up. And on a longer term basis, you can see that we touched, we even went through a little bit through the March low at around 1676. We went through to 1666 on my system. It might have been a bit higher, the Comex price. I haven't checked it. Silver, the same thing. I mean, silver, and I'll give you a monthly chart of silver. Silver went down to 2205. This is on my system. It might have been higher or lower on the futures. And as you can see, that was the low as well, pretty much below 22 there. In September last year and also in November. It's rebounded right off those levels. Yes, the technical picture now doesn't look good, and that's what the I would say criminals who did this in the futures market wanted to do. And who they are, of course, is speculation. I don't know for sure if they're agents of the bullion banks, if they're agents of the central banks. We know that the BIS trades for central banks. Central banks have accounts with the BIS, and we know that the BIS has futures accounts with the CME. They do trade in the CME or Comex. Of course, the CME owns Comex now. So yeah, that's what happened last night. It was a massive raid. It wasn't even, how can I say, it's kind of an unfair fight. When you fight someone, you face that individual, even though I'm not really a fighter, but you don't come from behind and like stab the person in the back. A real honorable fight, you face each other. But yesterday, the analogy is that someone drove past Comex at night and basically machine gunned the longs from behind. That's what happened. Of course, the people that have paper positions in the futures, leverage positions, long positions, they were annihilated. But you and I who hold real physical gold and silver, as Lynette Zhang says, we have shields made of metal. They can't defeat us. But if you've got paper, shields of paper, you're not going to be able to fight these people. So let's look at where we are this morning then in the markets, not only gold and silver, but the rest of all the other assets. So it's 8:22 a.m. London time. Spot gold, 1747. So yeah, the low here in my system was 1662. So amazing, $100 move in the middle of the night. We're down 15. The high has been 1769. That was just before the raid. That was when the futures opened. Silver is trading at 23.88, down 45 cents. Yes, it's down quite a bit, but the low was 22.05. So we're almost $2 off the low. So I think it's quite a significant bottom, even though it was gut-wrenching for some people who were watching the markets. Did I go out last night in the middle of the night and try to sell my gold and silver? Of course not. I'm going to keep stacking as I always do, because I know this is a fraudulent and criminal market. The paper, Comex, LBMA markets. So the Dow future is down 55 points. The NASDAQ is down 12. S&P future is down about 7 points. The FTSE is down 15 points. The currencies, that's the other thing. You would have expected the dollar to have been really strong because gold and silver collapsed. No, the other asset classes were pretty much unchanged. So it was a concerted effort on gold and silver for some reason. We can only speculate, of course. So yeah, sterling is unchanged this morning. So very little action in currencies, as I said. Euro is unchanged. The dollar is unchanged versus the yen. Dollar's down slightly versus the yuan, but not much to write home about. In the other currencies, we got the Aussie dollar unchanged versus the dollar at 73.50. And the Canadian dollar is unchanged as well. So this proves more than ever that there's a criminal cartel operating in the gold market. Of course, they own the regulators, the CFTC. This is probably being sanctioned by the official sector. And who's the official sector? Well, that's the U.S. Treasury, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England. They're okay with this because it's part of their policy to keep gold and silver suppressed, so people think there's no inflation, and they keep playing the Ponzi scheme game of fiat currencies. What about the other commodities? Well, crude got hit hard, and I would say it followed the smash on gold and silver. Crude is down over 2% at 66.40. High-grade copper is down only 1/3% at 432.50. And it's interesting that crude is down so much with some of the headlines I've seen, geopolitical headlines. I think Israel is now calling for regime change in Iran. You would think that would put a rocket up the oil price, but we'll have to wait and see how things evolve. Just to finish off, the 10-year yield, you would have thought as well maybe yields went up 20 basis points and that's why gold was smashed. But no, the 10 years been trading very steadily overnight. It's at 1.3%. It's just up 1 basis point. Hasn't been higher than 131. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.